NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Happy Veterans Day to all, especially those who have served. Later in the show, we'll speak with the Director of Veterans Affairs for Hampshire County, Steve Connor, and hear about the needs and offerings of his office and how those have shifted over the years.
We'll also head up to Greenfield to the bottom of a church to check out the facilities of Stone Soup Cafe, who are so much more than their name would imply. We get hands-on with their multifaceted endeavors with directors Kirsten Levitt and Whitney Robbins.
The Food Bank March is 2 weeks from today. We're talking a lot about hunger over the next 2 weeks. But first, science, because last week we were wondering what the results of the election might mean for the American scientific community.
And this week, with regards to space exploration, we are perhaps doubly so doing that.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Time for some more Kitchen Table Astronomy with Hampshire College astronomer from Kainat Studios, Dr. Salman Hamid, Mr. Universe. We were last week on the show, the day before the election, talking about the implications that the vote would have for the world of science. After this big preamble about how we weren't going to get into the weeds of politics, and then we totally got into the weeds of politics, which my news director, Sam Hudzik at NEPM News, thought was hilarious. So we're going to do the same thing again. The election is over. The results are in.
And the results are hilarious.
Are they? Elon Musk is our new scientific overlord. What are the implications of the recent election, in your opinion?
So there are different layers in terms of science that we can think of. We mentioned climate change, for example, last time. The Paris Agreement, Trump, at the time when he was president, he had pulled the U.S. out. And there is a pretty good chance that he will do that again. I'm returning from Nevada and Las Vegas, but not for the usually why people go over there. I was there over the weekend because of a memorial. There were a couple of things that when I was flying back, I was thinking about. The landscape is visually stunning when you are flying from there, and it reminds you of being on Mars. And then you see Vegas, the strip, like all the large buildings over there, all the casinos, and the expansion of it and how it is, direction it's going. And to me, it just seemed like if you were to define insanity, that would be that in the context of climate change, in the context of the droughts that the U.S. is facing and rest of the world is facing. And that's why the elections were on my mind, because the capitalism gone sort of berserk in Vegas, and it's nowhere stopping. I mean, the city is expanding over there, even though the conditions are worsening. If you think in terms of the world, which you have to when you are thinking about climate change, this is where global inequities come in, because at other places you cannot even cool yourself down when the weather goes up. So there needs to be, this is not an option. You need to address climate change. But to me, Vegas was just you look at it and you go what are we doing? And this is one of the casualties of the elections, and that's going to be the climate change. I should mention the other thing that I was thinking while flying over this spectacular landscape, which looks like Mars, and that is the timescales. This is another 4 years of Trump presidency. This is nothing. If you look at the landscape, and that's why I love the desert landscapes, because it just tells you, it just shows you how those features are formed. It takes them hundreds of millions of years to form. I mean, we flew over Grand Canyon, for example, and you see the Colorado River in there carving out, and you can actually see how long these structures take to be built. And these timescales are huge compared to, for example, a presidential term. Humans are just a very recent presence on the planet, and humans will be gone because of all the actions. Earth will be fine. Earth will be okay because of these larger time frames.
Thinking about it from that perspective, and what is slightly terrifying, given that we have escalating conflicts all over the globe and a giant nuclear arsenal on this planet, I think of the astronomer Fermi, who has what is called Fermi's paradox, the idea that the universe is so old and so big that it's almost impossible that intelligent civilizations able to communicate would not have existed at one time or another. One of the solutions as to why we have not heard from any of them yet is because once a civilization is capable of space travel and communication beyond its solar system, is that they inevitably destroy themselves. It is, granted, the most depressing, in my opinion, answer to Fermat's paradox. I like the one better, where they build a giant sphere around their whole solar system, so they're using every available photon from their sun to power all their energy needs in a clean way. But then we can't see them because we're not getting any energy out of their solar system. That's my favorite answer. Least favorite answer is we destroy ourselves when we have the capacity to. Do you have pause that we are with the potential of a world war brewing, with Korea now entering the front in Russia, and whatever is going to happen with Israel and Palestine and Iran, and a future president who has seemingly wanted all of the guardrails off of these international conflicts, while at the same time saying somehow he's going to end these wars on day one? Does that give you some scientific pause?
Not scientific pause, because a lot of these things are not science, right? I mean, this is human behavior. I don't know about the future of international aspects on Earth either. What would have been better? We have talked about nuclear weapons and that we need to really worry about it. But that, to a certain degree, has been more of a bipartisan thing. It's not just Republicans, or it's not just Trump. I know it won't be a very popular position, especially here in this area. But I think President Biden's policy, the way it was going in Ukraine, that might have led to nuclear war as well. It might have threatened Russia more, and that might have led to nuclear war as well. Whereas from Trump's perspective, his actions might be, at least in the short run, might be able to end the war. Now, that would not be good for Ukraine, nor for the world order, but maybe. I don't think I can say with clear conscience that President Biden's position, the way it was accelerating, that whether that would not have led to a nuclear confrontation or not. Not to mention that it's not just about nuclear weapons. I mean, large-scale bombs are being used in Gaza, on Ukraine as well. So those things are already happening. That's a much more depressing conversation, because that is a little bit about what humans are. I mean, I actually think we also used drones in a way that we never got a chance. And by we, I mean humans of this planet, and also American citizens to a certain degree, about what is the right military usage of the drones. But that barrier was broken by not a Republican, but President Obama. So that is a complex issue, but I think that a lot of it is bipartisan. One of the things that is expected, that Trump is going to be tough on China, but that also is bipartisan. Then there is a degree in certain cases, and under President Trump, when he was president before, he did initiate what came to be known as the China Initiative. And that was to really target Chinese academics, Chinese scientists, or Chinese origin scientists here in the US. And President Biden did remove that, but overall, the tough on China aspect is still there. That again is one of those things that it's going to be terrible for the world, because here are the two superpowers. Cooperation, especially in areas like science.
If there were better collaboration in 2019/2020, when the COVID pandemic was breaking out between the nation where it got its start and the United States, who knows what kind of level of communication, how that might have changed the trajectory of that disease.
Yeah, absolutely. And that again goes back to the thing that for the betterment of the planet, here are the two big powers that for science. Wouldn't it be great if they are talking to each other? I think there is a Musk in the room that we have to talk about.
Yeah, a new elephant in the room named Elon Musk.
That's the other aspect that people are asking, what's going to happen now? And this is a clear case where Elon Musk invested over $100 million in the election of Donald Trump. And I'm assuming that is not just for charity purposes, but he may want something in return. What's going to happen? There is a lot of things that we can talk about, including his autonomous vehicles. They are under investigations, and what's going to happen to those federal investigations, because there have been accidents. But also there is a Starlink satellite. There's a new contract that's coming up.
And we've mentioned before that Starlink is really problematic when it comes from Earth astronomy, trying to see the stars through this array of satellites, of hundreds, if not thousands of satellites he's put up there.
Yeah, I mean, since 2010, the number, I think there were a few thousand, about 1,000 satellites in 2010. And now there are, just by Starlink has added that number to over 6,000. terrible for astronomy. But what I want to talk about is its impact on the space program. And that's going to be interesting because Elon Musk has always been focused on Mars and not the moon. In fact, he says, like, why are we wasting time on the moon? And there has been the debate overall in the space community whether US should first go to the moon and then Mars. That's what's happening right now. And Elon Musk is certainly more interested in going to Mars. It looks like President Trump, or President-elect Trump, he actually said that in one of his rallies, Elon, get those rocket ships going because we want to reach Mars. Now, is that going to change course for NASA? And that's a likelihood. The moon program, which was also launched, actually, the Artemis program, Artemis Accords were really launched under previous term of President Trump. My guess would be that before the end of President Trump's term, he's going to make sure that there is a human landing on the moon. There are other aspects as well. Jeff Bezos, his paper did not endorse Kamala Harris.
Or Trump.
Or Trump.
Didn't endorse anybody in his paper.
His company, Blue Origins, they have been really focused on the moon. And most of the money of the contracts that are there, that NASA has given, are split between Elon Musk's SpaceX and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origins. What's going to happen to that? I think that will be an internal billionaire to billionaire struggle. Poor billionaires, that's what I would say to that. But there is a long shot that Trump may go for Mars because Elon Musk may actually really push for that. Can it happen during President Trump's second term? There is a very long shot, and again, there is chatter about that. There are a lot of regulations that the Starship testing has to go through. Elon Musk has been complaining about the fact that it has slowed him down, and he just wants to do it. And there have been a lot of issues with that, but he just wants to do it. So one possibility might be that if Mars become President Trump's obsession, which is, I would put it at 50-50 chance, then it may be like the Apollo program, like, that you must do this at any cost, and that there would be humans to Mars before his second term is over. Now, that was not in the cards, but that's a possibility. And the reason I'm saying that is because you cannot just go to Mars. There are certain orientations of Earth with respect to Mars where you can actually have a launch of rockets where you can get there. And there is a window in 26 and there is a window in 28. There is a small chance, and again, there are some vocal people are saying that, that maybe in 26 there can be a test of Starship to Mars, and 28 maybe a crewed mission to Mars that can get there before President Trump's second term is over. I think it will get there in 29. There are mixed feelings about that. Going to space is not as important as how we go to space. I mean, I think this is what values we bring in. While this could be interesting as a lifelong space enthusiast to a certain degree, there is a little flicker of excitement. Well, that's actually interesting. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, the way both Musk and Trump have expressed their views and their lack of concern, let's put it this way, for the environment, for safety of other people. I'm not 100% sure. I think that this would be a positive thing, not to mention that Apollo program, for however you think about it, was waste of money. It was for Cold War. It was not for individual narcissistic context. Whereas this, to me, it seems like, if you think, oh, wow, that would be a great achievement, but for what? It would be for a very personal, individual. We'll see. But I think Mars may have just entered into a conversation which would not have been had Trump not won the election.
And even if we don't actually get to Mars in the Trump presidency, given that Trump owns his own social media company, Elon Musk owns his own social media company, Jeff Bezos owns his own newspaper, they could just manipulate whatever information they want so that the public would believe that we landed on Mars, just like they believe we landed on the moon.
No. But, you just have to take it a little too far.
Coming up, we'll see how veterans are being served with Steve Connor, Director of Veterans Affairs for Hampshire County, and learn about their programs and offerings.
But first, a fable built through Zen teaching that now teaches the community to cook while simultaneously feeding them and keeping their pantries stocked. We head to Stone Soup Cafe in Greenfield next.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering graduate programs in public affairs, public policy and administration, data analytics, and computational social science. umass.edu/SPP. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering Co-op Advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Kirsten Levitt. I'm the executive director and chef.
I'm Whitney Robbins, and I'm the board president at Stone Soup Cafe.
Here we are in this basement. When COVID happened, the church stopped meeting in person, and we got to take over the entire basement. Good thing, too, because when COVID started, people started asking for extra groceries, and we created our community free store. This is our storage room, and it's pretty decimated after on Saturday. From Saturday, we saw over 114 households, and these shelves were all triple stacked, and now they're barely single stacked on the shelves. And so we go through a tremendous amount of dry goods, personal care items. We usually have protein, dairy, eggs, and of course, vegetables. Whitney was there handing out food on Saturday. Was there some special things that you had?
I worked the free store on Saturday, and it was awesome. I mean, it was 2 10 by 20 tents and a line down the street, and really hardly any limits on anything. You know, we give out 1 roll of toilet paper, but like everything else is like, well, how many can I have? Well, how many do you want? What are you cooking? You know, and just like as generous as possible and modeling abundance.
So I like the Pockies over there.
Yep.
Kids love that.
Please help yourself.
Because there's always a line, there is always a volunteer with a basket of goodies that go down the line and ask. I know it's a little hard to wait. Yeah, do you want a little chocolate to keep you going? And so that happens like several times through the line.
That's awesome.
So that we know that there are people who it's a lot to wait in a line, you know, and maybe they haven't eaten a really solid meal in a while, and maybe it's just difficult anyway. So to be offered something with a smile makes such a difference. So we try to practice a radical hospitality where just everybody is treated equally, and you know, who doesn't want a chocolate snack while they're waiting? I mean, imagine you're at the grocery store and you're like, oh, there's a line.
That's why they put them at the checkout, so that you look at it and go,
yes,
I need chocolate now.
Yeah. So and I watched our free store coordinator. He's like, oh, I think it's chocolate time, and he grabbed a new basket, and down the line he went, and he really was reading the, you know, people's. So it's amazingly peaceful with all the sea of humanity that is arriving, with all different histories and all different life circumstances, and it's a peaceful, beautiful thing with lots of color. There's always, even on Saturday, there's always art on the sidewalk. There are these beautiful banners. You can see a pile of them there.
Okay.
You know, most of our signs are handmade, and it's just a really beautiful. Yeah, those ones all have.
These are all gratitude ones for like the different orgs.
Like I said, that radical hospitality, like really being seen. I know a lot of our guests by names, and someone on Saturday said, I can't believe you remember my name. I was like, I've been seeing you for years, right? So, well, you know, just and you know, she's someone who's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's hard for her to come to Stone Soup, but I saw her stand up a little taller and just like give me a little head nod, like, you know who I am? Yeah, and then also on Saturday, I think there were 20 to 40 people I'd never seen before. And just like, wow, this is cool. Where did these people come from?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is that thing about the community need is outpacing the funding. Sure. And that is more and more true for all nonprofits, not just Stone Soup, in the current landscape. So in the current funding landscape where things were sunsetted or moratoriumed because COVID was no longer an emergency, and simultaneously that happened and the inflation bubble happened, instead of continuing to lift all people out of poverty, we threw them back down into a deeper hole. When we're live and doing it every week, you see what's happening to people and what their needs are. We supplement this free store by purchasing $400 to $500 worth of additional items every single week from our Deals and Steals warehouse or from other places. Like if we have to purchase the toilet paper, we will. Because remember, the model is built on dignity. And we don't want to stigmatize people. We want people to feel welcome. We want people to feel taken care of and fed and loved, because they're our community. It's not even a they, it's us. We are us. That is it. This program started out very well subsidized, and there was such a variety of things that came from the food bank, and now things are different and the availability of items is different, and so we supplement this program to ensure that people's needs are getting met. We get a lot of things that people who live outside can just open and eat. It doesn't require cooking. And we know that 20% of our population that visit Stone Soup does not have a full kitchen. And so we just try to make sure that there are things here that people can get good nutrition from without having to cook. And a lot of those items are not here right now, but we'll restock and they'll be here for next week. And then the inflation, the prices have not come down in the supermarkets in the way that people actually think. Yes, inflation's declining. That's 100% true. Yes, we're not paying $7 a dozen for eggs, but we're still paying $5. And people who understand nutrition and understand how certain products are made, not just eggs, I won't just pick on them, there's a quality and there's a price that's commensurate to that quality. And it used to be that you could get organic, free-range, pasture-raised eggs for $5, and that was a significant cost over the $2.99 for the regular farmed eggs. But you knew you were getting a different level of nutrition. And now you're still going to pay $8 for the pasture-raised eggs. And so, and I guess I still am picking on eggs, but it's the easiest picture to draw, right? Is when you have to pay more for something that you believe in putting in your body, you have to make choices. You see that beautiful new chest freezer? That beautiful new chest freezer was something that we ran a specific campaign on earlier this spring. The one that we had gotten as a donation from the food bank about 7 years ago totally died. And we really rely on having extra freezer space. It's one of those things that, if you want to make sure that you're not buying week to week and at the whims of some, what's on sale, you need to be able to have freezer space. So that freezer walked in the door in June. We had to raise $5,000 for it because we had to put in new electrical for it, as well as purchase the unit, which cost $4,000. So I just want to say, if any of you donated to our freezer project, thank you, because it's working and it's beautiful. Okay, come on down. Welcome to the kitchen.
This is where your magic happens?
Oh, this is where the magic happens, or the chaos, depending on the day and the menu.
Not mutually exclusive.
The kitchen absolutely keeps you humble no matter how well planned you are. I was super well planned on Saturday, and then my single door refrigerator just died. It was fixed yesterday, so you can't see that it was reading 82 degrees.
Oh my God. Whoa.
They recharged it and it's working, hooray. But this kitchen, we have a 10-burner stove. It's an all-electric kitchen. And we got those convection ovens and extra refrigerators through a grant way back in 2021, the Food Security Infrastructure Grant. So thank you, State of Massachusetts. We also have induction burners that we plug in. We've put a lot of electrical work into this old building to be able to carry electrical loads. So if you notice, there are cords hanging above those tables, and we can pull them down and actually plug in elements out there and get as much cooking done as possible. Every single weekend at Stone Soup, we celebrate something. A tradition from anywhere in the world. Something fun, sometimes too, like National Senior Citizens Day.
Dr. Seuss Day.
We've done Read Across America Day, and we do Nelson Mandela's birthday, and we do Bastille Day and the 4th of July, but we also do, the Feast of Saint Anthony, or we do Wigalia, right? All kinds of food from all the regions that we possibly can. I will say Australian food is the most difficult. And that's mostly because it's mostly French food unless you have indigenous cuisine, and you just can't get that stuff here. So we're not making Vegemite sandwiches. Stick that little sound clip in there. I know you will.
He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich.
But the reality is actually we're not serving any sandwiches here, and that's because this is a 100% gluten-free facility. And the vast majority of the food that we make is vegan, except for an omnivore entree, and occasionally we'll make quiche, and that's vegetarian. But the spices that you need to make food from around the world live in these 3 cabinets. Up here are all the ground spices that are warm. Oh, think about all the things that go in apple pie, pumpkin pie, or your Indian spices like cardamom. And down here, all the other kinds of seeds that get ground, like cumin and coriander and mustard. And then you have all of the, it looks like I need to do a restock, all of our herbs. And then everything that's not spicy but flavorful, like paprika, garam masala, turmeric, za'atar, and then all the spicy chilies and chili flakes and curry powders that you can think of. And then way up top is like my fermented black beans. So when I make Chinese food a couple of times a year, I always try to make a black bean something because it's one of my favorite flavors. And we make mole, so you can see we have sesame seeds.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You've got pepitas and sesame seeds,
Yeah.
that's mole.
Yeah, we make mole. We make all kinds of food here. We try to make sure that things taste as authentic and delicious as possible. And spices do that. And we spend a good deal of money on spices because, when you're creating a base, you really got to go for it in order to create flavor.
It's almost like spices are the spice of life.
No, you went. You tried. It's fine. More at Stone Soup as we hear about the scale of what Stone Soup is providing and the inner workings of their workforce program.
And later we'll learn about the needs of veterans on this Veterans Day with the Director of Veterans Affairs for Hampshire County, Steve Connor.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
I do a lot of hard work here, but my heart feels so good. So my hard work is my heart work, right? It just makes me feel so humbled to be able to honor traditions and cultures that bring people together and flavors that people savor. I'm a rhymer today.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, the food, and I have to say, I am definitely a foodie, and the food just overwhelms me with delight every single time I volunteer here and bring a meal home, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is so good, and it's oftentimes it's even like I'll sit there and be like, what is that spice? What was that?
Kirsten Levitt. I'm the Executive Director and Chef.
I'm Whitney Robbins, and I'm the Board President at Stone Soup Cafe.
Come on back here. This is where all of our cooking implements are. We literally cook out of chafing dish pans, big ones, 6 inches, 8 inches. We bake in the smallers, and I'll show you our pots, but I do want to tell you this pot story. So when we started Stone Soup, we were in a pot like this. This is an 18-quart pot. When we go to soup, it will take 6 of these. Before COVID, we made 2 of these pots for all of our soup. When you think about, you made like 36 quarts of soup back in the day. I'm making 140 quarts of soup. It takes a lot of stove space.
Yeah.
There's a light right back here. This is our bakery. We got this 30-quart industrial planetary mixer, again, from that food security infrastructure grant several years ago. And you can imagine what's it like to make brownies for 600. That would be 20 half-sheet pans. Or cookies for 600, especially at Christmas time. We make a variety of cookies, so instead of you getting like one cookie, you get like 4 or 5 different varieties. What's it like to make lemon meringue pie bars for 600? Sticky. So this room serves as our assembly, and it also serves as our storage. So we do try to have some things in stock at all times so that we're able to be like, this week we don't necessarily have enough funding to purchase X. Do we have it dried? Do we have it in can? And we don't like to open cans, but in the middle of winter, you're not going to get fresh local corn. So we'll open cans of corn, or we'll open cans of tomato product. I prefer to get the frozen peas, but if I forget to put them on the shopping list, I do have cans of peas that I can put in a pilaf.
And the giant, really old cans are used for pressing tofu.
Right, they press tofu. They are not.
Just to be clear. And
Yeah.
they do a great job.
I don't know if you know this, but Stone Soup operates a workforce development program that has been funded by a couple of different grants over the last several years. We've done 3 cohorts, and these are their changing rooms, and then they have closets for uniforms and little cubbies for their personal items,
Oh, cool.
Some
It's
people.
a school that you've created to create new chefs.
Yeah. Well, COVID decimated the restaurant industry. It really, for a lot of people who worked in the industry, they had the time to assess what their lives were, and they decided to move in different directions. And there is no place in Franklin County where you can get trained as an adult. An amazing program at the Tech for high school students, but no program for culinary for an adult. And with the transportation system the way it is, getting to Holyoke Community College for their program is really arduous for people. You might have a 6-hour school day, but you might spend 4 hours, 2 down and 2 back, just to get here. And if you're a single parent, or you're somebody who's taking care of someone else, it's really difficult for you to find a way. So we've been able in the last 2 years to offer a free 12-week training course, and we also wrote into our grant a stipend. It's minimum wage stipend, unfortunately, but at least you get paid to come to school as well as receive free tuition for schooling, and it's a very competitive process. The last cohort, we had over 50 applicants, and it was really hard for us to go to 8. But we did. We went to 8, and then we had a wonderful time with those students. And we graduated 3. Several had to leave early because they got full-time employment before the program was over.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
How long does the program run?
So it's a 12-week program. It includes a capstone luncheon so we invite people who have supported the program or who are interested in replicating the program, or just VIPs from our area. And the students make they made a 5-course luncheon for them this year. It was delicious and beautifully plated and presented. They did such a great job. They also go out with me and learn how to do catering. They do 3 4-week internships. So they come to school for 20 hours and they have to intern for 4 hours. So the first 4 weeks they intern with me here at the cafe, and then they go out to local area restaurants. So this year they went to The Pint, Franklin County Co-op, Mesa, and Hope and Olive. They did really good. Here's the pots.
Oh, hello, beauties.
So here's my original pot. This is the actual original pot. It's a 22 quart, not an 18. But this is the original pot from the very beginning Stone Soup days. Now we use this pot, this pot, this pot, and sometimes this pot on top of it. We, literally making soup in all of these. And I fill to the brim. And people are like, "What'd you do that for?" And I was like, "I couldn't help myself." Yeah.
I mean, the amount of, chopping of kale, that will turn into how many trays of kale, what?
Depends on what we're making.
12 or... It is a lot of kale. It takes, 50, 60 volunteers each weekend to do a meal?
For just meal, I think it's 75, and 15 of them are delivery drivers that are volunteer. And then the free store takes another 10 or 12. Yeah. I mean, it's quite the endeavor. Last year we saw over 500 unique volunteers. So 500 people who might have been strangers and then became friends. And some of them come back all the time, and some of them were just in for a day. 2 weeks ago, we had this lady come in from the UK. She was like, "I've been following on Facebook from the UK for years. I have friends here, and I'm finally here to volunteer." Are you kidding me? You came from the UK to come and be with us? I was floored. And she was adorable.
I heard a great story, too. Like, one of our board members, when she was a teenager, her family hosted a Mexican exchange student, and he has stayed in touch with her, and his son, Eduardo, is coming to volunteer with us this weekend. So it's like,
Right.
It's just such a wonderful place to share with people. I think most of my friends and family have come and volunteered at some point because it's like, you have to experience Stone Soup. You know, share the bounty and meet my friends and eat the food, and it's just
And experience the personalities.
You can be a first-time volunteer or a 100-time volunteer, and it's never the same, and it's always interesting. You'll meet someone that guarantee you wouldn't have met otherwise. It's really satisfying to give back to your community, and it's immediate. You walk in the door, you get greeted, and boom, you're put to work. So it's a wonderful experience.
Kirsten Levitt, the executive director and executive chef of Stone Soup Cafe in Greenfield, and Whitney Robbins from the Stone Soup Board. Stone Soup is one of the 200-ish agencies that receives food and support from the Food Bank of Western Mass. The March for the Food Bank is a fortnight from today.
And the after-March party is catered by the excellent chefs of Stone Soup when Monty and the entourage eventually land in Greenfield Center after walking 43 miles over 2 days. So more on that in the days and weeks to come.
Up next, it's Veterans Day today, and we'll hear about the needs of vets in our area from the Director of Veterans Affairs for Hampshire County, Steve Connor.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, offering solar options, energy security, and solutions for the local community. Learn more at northeast-solar.com. NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village, offering research-based arts, music, fitness, and lifelong learning programs at their assisted living and Alzheimer's care community in Westfield. armbrookvillage.com.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith, and today is Veterans Day.
Which is nationally important.
Even though neither of us are veterans, though my partner is.
And my dad is. We're joined by the Director of Veterans Affairs and a veteran himself, Steve Connor. Earlier this year, the city of Northampton posted, "Today we honor Steve Connor's 20 remarkable years of service to the veterans of Northampton and surrounding communities. From his early days as a champion for veterans benefits to his role as Director of Central Hampshire Veterans Services, Steve has been a tireless advocate for those who served our country."
The Post continues, his leadership in veteran services across 11 Western Massachusetts communities has made a lasting impact, ensuring that our heroes receive the support and recognition that they deserve. Steve's journey reflects a deep commitment to public service, empathy, and advocacy, always putting veterans first. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Happy Veterans Day to you, Steve,
well, thank
as
you.
a veteran yourself.
It flows a lot better than when people would say Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
Like, Happy Memorial Day doesn't work for us.
Yeah, no.
But Happy Veterans Day does.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about the nuances there because, I mean, I think a lot of people probably know this, but Memorial Day is a slightly different nuanced look at the service of people in this country.
Yeah, Memorial Day is really to honor those that were killed in action. We've extended it to all veterans that have passed, but the primary thing is those that were killed in action. It came from the Civil War.
Right.
That's where it started, which is actually where my job started as well, was from the Civil War. But Veterans Day, which was once called Armistice Day, they said it was going to be for all veterans, not just World War I when it was Armistice Day. That was a happy moment. It's to honor the veterans that are living, and we want to celebrate what they did.
Right.
Unlike Memorial Day, it's hard for people to understand, but that's like a memorial. That's like a mourning and a funeral march.
Yeah.
And we do it to the cemetery. Veterans Day goes to someplace not sad, not solemn, but to celebrate.
Big happy
That's the
parade.
difference,
Celebrating
yeah.
the life that survives.
Yeah.
And the end of a war.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and we had a gentleman at our breakfast in Northampton on Saturday morning. He's 101.
Wow.
And he was telling the stories about what he survived, malaria, yellow fever. He had all kinds of stories. I met a gentleman up in Brattleboro, 102. He was a prisoner of war. They have great stories, but, I mean, yeah. In Hadley, we're having a luncheon on Wednesday, and there's going to be 2 veterans, 1 female, 1 male, and they're both 103. Can you believe it? And that's to celebrate
Right.
all that they did, all they sacrificed, and they hung in there. And they still want to volunteer and do things.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
They were always talking about blue zones. Maybe they should be talking about red, white, and blue zones.
There you go.
The veterans who make it are living up to be centenarians. Let's talk about your office a little bit. You know, Central Hampshire County, we mentioned 11 communities you serve. Who funds your office? Where does your office funding come from?
So back in 1861, believe it or not, Massachusetts decided, with all these guys going off to war in the Civil War and not either coming home or coming home with a lot of issues, that they passed this law called Chapter 115, right? And it was done in 1861. And it was that every city and town had to have somebody to address the needs of the veterans or the widows and family members of that veteran from that war. And so it's been funny as I've gone and created. I was just Northampton for a long time. Then we took over towns when they needed somebody. And I'll talk about the benefits of that. But as I was doing it, people would say, well, how long have you been, how long do they ask that you have to be here? And I'm like, 1861. And they go, oh, I guess it's not an unfunded mandate.
Right.
I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And Massachusetts said that had to happen, and it's such an awesome program. But so many people didn't know about it. I didn't even know about it when I came home. My father said, go down to the vet's agent, give him your DD-214. And I'm like, why? Oh, just so you can keep it on hand. I'm like, da-da-da. I didn't know they had programs that could have helped me as I was struggling, transferring. I had no idea. But nowadays, with these new wars, lots of people get trained. And we get training at least twice a year about all that goes on so that we can meet the needs of somebody who came home last month, yesterday, or 50 years ago.
Wow.
How does the state support for your office differ from what you might get federally for your office?
So what the state does, so my job and my staff are paid by all the cities and towns that are in my district. The benefits we provide, financial assistance, if I do it all correctly, like I pay it out from all the city and town treasurers, if I do it correctly, they go, okay, we're going to give you 75% of that back. And a year later, we get the money back. That's what the state does. They also change the laws and the regulations and the benefits, and they just did it again this summer so that we have to keep up on it. Now, there's a higher annuity. It went from $2,000 twice a year to $2,500 once a year. Tax things have changed. Excise tax. They change all the time. And the feds do exactly the same thing. A few years ago or 2 years ago, they passed what was called the PACT Act. That's a tough one to say. But the PACT Act basically was to address all the toxins during these last 20 years that people were exposed to in burn pits and things like that, jet fuel, all of that kind of stuff. But they also had to throw in, I think, 3 different things, and then one of them is MGUD or something like that. Don't ask me how to pronounce it. But it's a disease, and it's caused by Agent Orange. They also said, oh, you know how we always said that you had to be in the ground of Vietnam? Well, then there was the Blue Water Navy, so if you were in the Navy and you served in a ship within certain miles, you got it. Well, I fought for 11 years for a guy who worked out of Westover. He went to Vietnam for 2 days and came back. But what was his job? To maintain the planes that took the Agent Orange. He worked out of Westover. Now people who served in Guam, Thailand, all of that were exposed to Agent Orange. And one of the presumptives that they just said, besides that MGUD, is hypertension. So now I have veterans who have hypertension. If it's under control, they don't get a whole lot of compensation for it. But if they die from it, it's a service-connected death. And that means a lot, both for the whole process of burial, but also for the surviving family. So there could have been widows and widowers from the last 20 to 30 years that died, and on that death certificate it said hypertension was one of the things. They haven't gotten anything. It took them 50 years to come out and say, oh, yeah, hypertension too.
We're speaking with Steve Connor this Veterans Day, who's the director of Central Hampshire Veteran Services for 11 communities in our area. These are really interesting and I'm kind of innovative ways of now treating people who've come back from the war. I think so many people who know vets who didn't want to talk about what happened, what they were exposed to in the war. They kept it in.
Right.
These services that your office is offering are hugely valuable. What are the struggles that some contemporary veterans from, say, the Iraq War, from Afghanistan, have been experiencing that your office helps to serve?
Their barriers are much less, and if you talk to them, the first thing they'll do is thank the Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
So in all reality, let's go back all the way to Daniel Shays. Nobody was going to give veterans benefits unless the veteran demanded it.
Right.
And they did it back then. They did it in the Civil War. That's why we have the Chapter 115 program. They did it in World War I. They were protesting down. Tens of thousands of veterans took over Washington, D.C., saying, look, mustard gas, all the things we had to go through. You need to help us. They came up with the VA.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it started. So it's always been veterans have to demand it. Well, veterans of the Vietnam War have been demanding for years for these things. It has made it so much easier for the returning veterans, and they'll tell you that.
Yeah.
That their lives are easier because of it. Now, again, every generation is different. We have veterans who have served over these last 25 years they don't do what used to happen, which is I got drafted or I enlisted because I didn't want to go in this service.
Right.
I didn't want to do that. And they sent me to Vietnam. I did my year. I came back.
Right.
Now you have people who served in Iraq 2 times, Afghanistan 3 times. They may have made it a career, or they've used the National Guard in the reserves much more than they did since, World War II. So you have people who have served. 1/2 of 1% of all of America serve in the military. There isn't very many. We don't see them. I deal with a lot of American Legions and VFWs and AMVETs that talk about, well, the young veterans aren't joining things. There's not that many of them.
Right.
When I started this job 21 years ago, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a veteran because they were everywhere.
Why are you hitting veterans with dead cats, Steve Connor?
Sorry. Wrong phrase.
It's a beautiful metaphor. Don't take it back.
Yes. I know. I love it. Yeah.
But nowadays, there's the Vietnam veterans are still around. There's some Korean and World War II veterans that I talked about. But there's not hordes of veterans that are being mobilized to do. But it does crack me up. Even those veterans that have come home, if I ask them to do something for other veterans, they're right there.
Yeah.
So that mentality is still there. They just don't have the numbers that they used to. And that's kind of what I've talked about all this week as I've gone to all these different events. And boy, there's been many of them.
Yeah, and more to come.
Yeah, I have a couple more days. But it's talking about, we think about Veterans Day and Memorial Day and to honor the folks. Well, most of the people that organize those things and push them and do all the work are veterans.
Yeah.
So you got veterans supporting veteran recognition, and they're always saying it's for my buddy. They're not saying it's for them. It's saying it's for my buddy.
Yeah.
Well, now that we have less and less, it's going to be up to the average community member to step up to honor these veterans because they're much older or they're just fewer. And if we're going to keep doing it, we need more participation from the community to honor these veterans and their service.
What are some of the ways that we can do that to come and help volunteer, like support services?
So one of the things that we do and we've been doing is trying to organize these events. And, well, I also am doing claims for the VA. I also have homeless veterans. We have assisted over 600, we stopped counting, homeless veterans get rehoused to prevent them from losing their housing. So the ceremonies, I love doing them, but it's just a whole lot of extra work for an office that we can't handle it.
Right.
What we need is people to volunteer to handle those things. We can guide them and all of that, but to honor them, we need the community to step up. They only have to call their town and say, how can I help? You know, there's a VSO in every single community. Call them up and say, you know, and it was funny. I brought it up in my event in Amherst this morning. Who's the first one who came up? A 91-year-old veteran. I can help. I'm like, yes, I'm sure you can. But yeah, so it's the field and the work has been amazing. It is very rewarding. Sometimes your heart breaks when somebody doesn't get what they deserve or they've passed away before you can get it for them. It's really hard. But for others, you know, getting them help and getting them connected and getting them health services and getting them housed, you can't ask for anything more rewarding than that. And so I've been doing it for over 20 years.
Yeah, and you know, and I've known you for a good chunk of that 20 years,
Yeah.
and I feel like our veterans are in really good hands with you, Steve Connor, who
sure.
Thank
is
you.
the director
I have a great staff.
of Central Hampshire Veterans Services, serving 11 of our communities here
It's
in Western
actually
Mass.
13, and it might
13,
be. Yeah,
okay.
we
And it might
included
grow, is what
it
you
might
were
grow
saying?
by one more.
Okay.
I'll know tomorrow night. But yeah.
Things are always changing.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you.
Always changing.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for your service to veterans, and have a happy rest of your Veterans Day celebrations.
And thank you for getting the word out and letting people know that we're here to help any veteran or their family members.
Again, even though it's not us, we're both connected
Yes.
in
Yeah.
pretty direct ways.
And many families are.
Yep.
Well, on the next Fabulous 413, we're continuing to explore the ways we can help each other in our community through two of our favorite means, art and food.
We'll head down the road to the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts to speak with Laura Sylvester, Public Policy Manager for the organization, to hear about recent policy change effects on their organization and how public policy on food really does affect everybody.
And we'll head to Asheville to take in Double Edge Theater's latest production, Leonora, La Maga y la Maestra, about the surreal life of Leonora Carrington, grounded here and now. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Clee Smith. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413. Happy Veterans Day.
Coming